So you may have come across this term, the New Earth. What does it really mean? What is it all about? Well, to put it simply, we are going through a major period of consciousness expansion in the collective. Some of it has to do with spirituality, but a lot of it has to do with actually seeing life clearly and seeing how life works and really feeling into how life could work better. You see out there, a lot of people want to talk about this concept of NPCs. There's this sense that most people around there in our lives, in the world, are kind of just moving along as they have been programmed or conditioned. Well, I think the New Earth is actually challenging that assertion. What it's saying is that we're moving into a place where everyone is a main character. Everyone's the main character in their own story, and every life actually matters. And a lot of this does have to do with seeing that the nature of life is consciousness, and we share the same consciousness. And so by extension, we care, and we are sort of invested in the expression, in the authenticity of every single person that exists on planet Earth. If we want to understand the New Earth, we have to think a little bit about the old Earth. And the way that Earth and life has worked on this planet for some time is that there are a series of pre-established tracks that you're allowed to walk down. And essentially the New Earth is going to be one where you don't have to just pick a path that's been chosen for you, because the paths that are available to us at the moment have essentially been approved by our collective consciousness. And our collective consciousness has not been in as high a state historically as it is today, and it's certainly not in as high a state as it will be over the coming decades and centuries. So this period of consciousness expansion on Earth is going to manifest in allowing people to have more choice around the kind of lives that they live. And one of the really significant things that will come from New Earth is essentially a new economic paradigm. We're going to see less people working for others, and more specifically, less people being forced to work in a job where your boss or the company that you work for or the organization that you work for really isn't operating at your level of consciousness. People are either going to be working for conscious companies or they're going to be working for themselves. We're going to see a lot more freelance work. We're going to see a lot more small business, online entrepreneurs. This kind of direction is very important because given where things are at the moment, those new paths, those new avenues would allow someone to have authentic self-expression, full self-actualization without being limited by the stagnant state of our collective consciousness. Now, it is going to take some time for things to come through. We'll probably eventually get to a point where essentially all paths available to you, including creating your own path, are wonderful. But we're not quite there at the moment. So at the moment, we do kind of rely on these brave New Earth leaders to not only escape the way that things have been done in the past, but to create these new avenues of opportunity for people around them. You know, the New Earth isn't just about you escaping the corporate grind. It's also about you creating opportunities for others to go on that journey with you. It's fantastic if we become solo, conscious entrepreneurs, but it's even better if we can create conscious companies, conscious business avenues, conscious places of work, and avenues of collaboration that are going to allow other people to go on the journey with us. And it comes back to how I started the video. If you think that everyone else is an NPC and you don't really respect that consciousness expansion process that is happening in other people around the world, you're just going to try and essentially squeeze value out of people instead of seeing them as a main character in their own story. I think it's pretty obvious that the reason that many of us are depressed or anxious, or that there's all this conflict in our collective, is essentially because these old systems not only don't work for us, but we know that something better is possible. We know that we don't need to work as much as we have been expected to work on average. We know that things like housing and relationships and having enough money to go on holiday and supporting a family are essentially the bare essentials that are necessary to live an authentic, fulfilled life. We just can feel that there's this massive gap between already what is possible and already where our collective consciousness is at and the lives that we're living. Essentially, in our history, it's been okay for us to have a large number of people who are kind of at the bottom of the societal ladder, and some people at the top who we trust to have more power, more control, and to experience more, luxury, freedom, and pleasure. But that's just not really where we're at anymore. We don't live in a world where only a few people at the top are really intelligent or creative. We live in a world now where people everywhere in all walks of life are switched on. They're conscious. And from the perspective that you have more than one lifetime and what you really are is a soul and you have a higher self, it's also just shaking up the idea that your achievements in this lifetime and the choices that you make between 0 and 20 actually define who you are and your potential. When you go on this spiritual awakening path, when you go on this journey of consciousness expansion, we're seeing people everywhere wake up. It must be said, not everyone is waking up at the same rate, and that's because the conditions on Earth don't allow everyone the same freedom to go on this spiritual awakening journey. The way I might like to think about it is that the soul or the higher self actually picks where to incarnate, so that if it's meant to go on a spiritual awakening path, for me, it was probably my early 20s where this really started to kick into gear. I needed to be in a position where it was even possible for me to put the energy and the time and the focus into my journey. But if I was living somewhere else in different conditions, I simply wouldn't have had the luxury to do so. So it's sort of a slow process where as there is more freedom available to people, they're able to wake up more and more and more and more. So there are people out there who will wake up. There are people out there who will go on a consciousness expansion journey who just aren't able to do it yet because we haven't given them the freedom to do so. So we need to make sure that we really commit to our process of consciousness expansion. We commit to refining ourselves and going on this journey of spiritual awakening and building a lifestyle and a career that is in alignment with what we need as conscious beings, but also making sure that we, leave the ladder for others to come up with us as we go on our own ascension journey. We also need to talk about the challenges though. And the challenge is essentially that most people on Earth are still living in very low frequency, stagnant, ego-driven states of consciousness. Now the ego is everywhere. The ego is going to come up for you as you go on your ascension journey. It's going to stay with you as you expand, but it will soften, it will mature, it will be a slightly refined ego. And if you're really on the consciousness expansion journey, you will find ways to essentially not let the ego intervene, to see through the ego, to see through that, to be in your soul more consistently, etc. But the people around us are probably still going to be largely driven by ego. And some of them are going to be open to being supported, and they're not really a problem at all, are they? Because we can see they're just like us. They might be a little bit further behind their own consciousness expansion process, but if they're open-minded and they're probably struggling with the same things that we are, and we can provide them that support and that freedom and that respect, they'll climb the mountain with us. So then they're no problem. There will be other people though who are really, really enjoying the way that things are currently going. The system has worked for them and they feel that they have made all of the achievements in their life because they haven't gone on the consciousness expansion journey and they haven't seen through the idea that they are the complete architect of their reality. I know we like to talk in the spiritual space about how you are the creator, but hang on, did you create Earth? Did you create the sun? Did you create the moon? No, of course, there's a part of you that is essentially co-constructing reality, right? But this is not your reality. The human didn't create this. The mind didn't create this. And most people are living as if they are the architects of their own destiny. They became successful, they earned all this money because they're really smart and they're really good and they had the perfect strategy. And these are the people who are going to be the most resistant to the new Earth because at the moment we have a small number of people in society who have power and a large number of people who are kind of subservient to them. I'm not saying it's a terrible system. There are a lot of great things in our world, but there's no way around it. As the collective expands, there's not going to be as much centralized control and centralized power. It's going to be power coming to the people. Not in a, French Revolution sense, but we're all going to become the main characters. It's not a couple of main characters at the top in the castle and then some farmers who do the work for them. We're all going to be much more, not the same. There's still individuality. There's still different journeys. Some people earn a boatload of money. Some people have enough to get by. It's sort of depending on who you are and what your journey is and what you create. Some people might create more than others. Some people might coast along a little bit and sit in the cave for 20 years. It's going to be fun to actually let people choose their own adventure. We actually don't really get to choose how we want to live life most of the time. It's just inherited. I'm going to do this because this seems like the best of the choices available to me. So there is going to be some resistance, and we need to make sure that we don't start to get into this spiritual warfare mindset of kind of like, we are the awakened souls and these are the de-evolutionary forces, even if it's true to some extent. We definitely don't want to get attached to like, this model of spirituality is better than this model of spirituality, even if we think that there are some, points to be made and some stuff is a bit more distorted than others. If we start doing that stuff, or rather if we start to continue doing that stuff, we are just in the same cycles that we've been for all of history. You look at history, it's a bunch of nations and cultures and traditions all saying, hey, I have the way forward and I'm going to do this new thing so that everyone has a better life. And then it just becomes war and conflict, and that's not the new earth. The new earth is like, it's a peaceful version of that. The reason the new earth actually works is because our state of consciousness expands to the point where we realize, hang on, I'm in this group, and on the surface level I might seem different to that group, but I actually know that behind all of our conditioning, we are the same being. Even if this person over here is Islamic and I'm raised Christian and I have strong differences of opinion, maybe even strong, like deeply ingrained spiritual experiences and beliefs that seem in conflict, there's still a part of us that knows, hang on, we're the same consciousness. This is why I love non-duality and awareness and ego dissolution, because as the consciousness on Earth expands, we are going to engage more in spiritual reality. We are going to see more, awareness of energy and entities, and people going to Christ over here and people going to the Pleiadians over there. We're going to see more of that stuff happen, yogic culture over here to some extent. And you can see that I've paved my way in between different paths. And the new Earth is going to be respectful of many different paths. It's not going to say that they're all the same. It doesn't expect you to look at where everything is in the state of the world and these different spiritual models and these different cultural, ideas, identities, systems, and just go, well, we're all the one consciousness, so it's all as good as everything else and everything's dandy. No, that's silly. You're allowed to have preferences, but you're not going to destroy a culture. You're not going to, that's the main thing. You're not going to try and, kill the infidels, because that's just you completely losing sense. I'm actually releasing a course at the moment, and it's about conscious transformation, awakening, and ascension. And one of the things that we do in the modules is we look at a few models of consciousness expansion, and my favorite at the moment is spiral dynamics. And it groups consciousness expansion into 3 tiers, with the top tier, 3rd tier, being essentially non-dual consciousness, completely transcending the ego, seeing that you don't have personal will at all, and that you are one with all reality. I would note, by the way, that some people think they're in 3rd states, non-dual states of consciousness, and they are not. So we talk about that in the course. But there are also 2nd tier and 1st tier states. I'm not going to get into the details here. I would just note that it's really distasteful to kind of rank yourself in a model of consciousness and to put yourself right at the top, to put everyone else down at the bottom. But it's good to look at these systems because they do show you that essentially consciousness has slowly evolved over time. And in these, 1st tier states of consciousness, you can go back to thinking about something like Genghis Khan and tribal warfare. And then you come through and you have traditional organized religion, which is very much about, I would say, controlling the populace. Doesn't mean that there aren't truths to organized religion. Doesn't mean that saints and followers of religious traditions don't have authentic spiritual experiences. But most people who follow a religious path are sort of superficially involved. They're not directly connected to truth. And you go up, you start to have our interest in science and materialism and capitalism and developing economics. Then you start to get into postmodernism and all these waves of cultural movements that come through and resistance to the earlier stages. All that's 1st tier. We're slowly evolving. But the new Earth, to me, we're not quite there yet. It's still very uncommon to see people in 2nd tier states. It's actually about integrating the truths in those 1st tier stages. And it's really about discernment. It's about seeing that some of the things that came through from, let's say, traditional religion were great, and some of them weren't. Some of them were distortion. And the same in all of the states. So some of the things that came through in stage green postmodernism, wow, that's great. We have more rights, we have more freedom, etc. Some of the other things, maybe not so true. It's not really for me to tell you what is good and what is not good. it's not about Jack getting into a higher state of consciousness. It's about all of us, on average, being in that higher state of consciousness. And what I will say is I'll just note two more things for you. So there's a stage very early in our development on Earth called stage purple, and it's where we have a lot of magical thinking. And then there's a stage in second tier called stage turquoise. And this is essentially when you are in a state of consciousness where things like the soul and the higher self are authentically coming through for you. You can see that stuff is real. And there's a concept that I love called the pre-rational and post-rational fallacy. And I talk about this in my course. And it's essentially that if you're not super invested in this stuff and you're not experiencing it for yourself and you're not able to discern truth particularly well, you might confuse a really low state of consciousness with a very high state of consciousness and vice versa. One example that comes up is confusing the state of consciousness that a baby has with the state of consciousness that a enlightened guru has. You know, just because there is no mind, it doesn't mean that you're in that state of realization. And in the same way, we do need to be a little bit discerning. There's a lot of stuff out there that might seem super high vibrational and, oh my gosh, this is 5D, this is 8D. But if you really look at it, it's magical thinking. And so the new Earth is not first tier. The new Earth is second tier. And it's why I often am talking about science and spirituality coming together. I want to be clear. There's a science that is just first tier, that's too stuck in materialism and is closed off to spiritual reality and closed off to energy. That's not second tier science because it hasn't integrated these spiritual, energetic, non-physical truths. So that's what we're seeing. It's a refinement of all of these things. Hey, just popping in at the end of the video to let you know that my course is probably still free if you're watching this right when I uploaded the video, but it won't be free forever. I am going to put a price on it. It's a great program. There are 4 modules that you can complete for free. And if you complete all the modules within 7 days, I'm giving you access to a free module, which is all about conscious capitalism and creating a soul-led business in line with what I've been sharing in this video. This video came out of nowhere. I didn't have a script or a plan, but the course is very well structured and planned, and it really distills the 7 years of my consciousness expansion journey into just a few modules for you. You can complete it in a couple of days, and I'm very passionate about helping people get out of first tier states of consciousness and into second tier states of consciousness. And I do a lot of work, as I think some of you will know watching this channel. I'm an Akashic Records practitioner, but I really want to work with people who want to kind of go the whole way. You're interested in these second and third tier states and you want to embody them. You want to be a leader in the new Earth. You want to go all the way with your consciousness expansion journey and make sure that you're completely self-actualized and fulfilled and not stuck in some of the strange, distorted, deluded traps that many of us do get stuck in. So if you enjoyed this video, jump in the course. It's free. I really hope you get something out of it. All right, see you in the next one.